The rising cost of food has made the policy infinitesimal. The outcome of the policy does not translate into food sufficiency. The cost of feeding has gone higher than it was even when we were importing. But that is not to say the policy is bad. Every policy has a starting point. Our prayer is for a policy to work, it has to be continued. And what has killed policy, agricultural policy, educational policy, and every other policy in Nigeria and Africa is policy discontinuity. A new government come and kill the old policy. And agriculture is not a short-term policy program. In planning, you plan for 20 years, minimum. Agricultural program planning should have a minimum of 20 years. Policy come and go, but the plan should roll on for 20 years. That is why we have always not have any agricultural policy to take us out of the wood.
All right, thank you so much, Comrade. You have said a whole lot, and this is really beautiful. You've taken us through all the past policies till the present policy, the anchor growers. We're going to come to that, but then I feel that what is common with all the policies that you have talked about is the fact that they are all short-lived.
Yes.
Like you see from the Operation Feed the Nation, Farmer Settlement Scheme, Operation Feed the Nation, Green Revolution, and all of the policies that you have talked about. Most of them are all short-lived. When one government is coming in, they bring in their new policy, and then the other one becomes very useless, which there's no continuity, like you have said, and then that has affected agriculture a whole lot. Now let's come to our present day. As a matter of fact, we cannot be crying over spilled milk for all of the policies that are in the past. So let's concentrate on what we have presently. The Anchor Borrowers program, which is one of the policies that has shaped Nigeria agriculture to a large extent. It's actually very effective. So let's say, would you advise that the government that is coming in change this policy or review this policy, or you think that just continuing the policy without any form of review is better? I really want us to shed more light on this to see that if do we really need to review the present agri policy and then get something more robust, better for agriculture in Nigeria now, or we can just continue with what General Buhari has started? What do you think?
You see, I used to say, the farther you can look back into history, the farther you can see into the future.
Most definitely.
What made the other policies to fail? Those things that failed the other policies are still with us. Cronyism. Policies are implemented by cronies of the people in government and not those who have the capacity. Policies are targeted at making few people rich and not feeding the masses. Policies are targeted at scoring cheap political popularities and not really putting food on the table. Policies are targeted at creating jobs instead of generating jobs. The difference between generating job and creating job is that the job created are on the payroll of the government. The job generated are on the payroll of the system, not on the government. Like I said, agriculture cannot stand in isolation. For agricultural policy to be effective, there have to be other adjoining policies, like policy on industrialization, policy on transport, policy on education.
Finance.
And policy on finance, yes. So we have agricultural policy in Nigeria. the majority of work done by this outgoing government on agriculture is on rice production. And the rice value chain is short. The rice value chain is short. It's growing rice, threshing rice, processing rice, and eating rice. The value chain is short. From the farm to the factory to the port. But there are other produce that the value chain is longer, that has a multiplier effect on the national economy, the state economy, the local government economy, and even the individual economy. Like before the coming of what we call economic meltdown in the days to the twilight of Obasanjo's government, we had over 400 textile mills in Nigeria. These 400 textile mills or thereabout were employing close to 40 million people, direct and indirect employment. As we speak, none of these textile mills is functioning today.
Not even one?
None is functioning today. So from the pants we wear, to the singlets, to the handkerchiefs, all imported. And this crop that generates the raw material for this factory is just cotton. Cotton value chain is longer than the rice value chain, much as rice has to do with stomach infrastructure. The palm oil value chain is richer to the national economy than the crude oil. Malaysians came to Nigeria, were trained in Benin, Nigeria Institute for Oil Research. They went back home, got palm seedlings from here. Today we are importing palm oil from Malaysia. Because they have a long duration, a long program plan for agriculture. Their first phase was 20 years. From when they sent trainees to Benin to come and learn how to plant the crop, to the 20 years period for the crop to grow for them to harvest. That is the first phase, first 20 years. We have never had any agricultural policy or program that has lasted 5 full years. So we don't expect to be doing the same thing and be expecting a different result. That is the new definition of madness. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. As we speak today, palm produce, or palm oil particularly, the red palm oil, is more expensive in the international market than crude oil. And the cost of processing palm fruit or palm fruit into palm oil is cheaper than the cost of even hauling petrol from where it is refined to where it is consumed. So it is even far cheaper to produce palm oil than to produce petrol. So why not a government come with a policy on palm production? A liter of palm oil now is in the neighborhood of 700. 1 liter of palm oil is in the neighborhood of 700, 1,000, depending on the place. And depending on the proximity of where you are buying to where it is produced. And depending too on the quality of the palm oil. In the FCTA environs here in Maraba, in Masaka, a liter of palm oil is 1,000 naira. A liter of petrol is about 390 naira. Or the worst case scenario, 400 naira. That means 1 liter of palm oil is more expensive than 1 liter of petrol. So Nigeria will make more money and become richer as a palm oil producing country than a petrochemical oil producing country. Everybody in the world, I think there is no religion, there is no race that do not eat rice. We can produce rice here. What did Thailand do differently? They concentrated on rice where they have comparative advantage. In Nigeria, there is nearly no crop that we don't have advantage. All we need to do is to provide a level playing ground for farmers to access farm inputs, to access credit facilities at a very reasonable interest rate and a longer duration of repayment Because agriculture is not a short-term project. We are operating a rain-fed agriculture. The infrastructural base for agricultural productivity does not stop at the rain-fed agriculture alone. We should look at irrigation. We should look at damming our rivers. One, if you dam your rivers, it will control flooding and make water available for irrigation. So agricultural policy will solve two problems. Natural disaster will be taken care of.
And then food will be available.
Food availability and food security will be available. And that will result in employment generation. That's why I say employment generation is different from employment creation. If you create employment, the people have to be on the payroll of the government. That's what we do. In our campaigns, if you read through the manifestos of all the candidates that contested for the 2023 election, presidential election, they are all promising to create jobs, except perhaps for one of them, I think Mr. Obi, who said there will be job generation. Job generation means you create an establishment, you create an enabling environment for private sector to thrive. The private sector will create the employment. They will not be on the payroll of the state government or the federal government, but they will be employed.
And you know, one of the very dangerous thing about job creation is once that government goes, everything goes.
Yeah, because the job is not going to sustain. There is job creation, there is job sustainability, there is job security. What is the security of the job created when there is no work to do? I told my audience somewhere that in Nigeria, a job simply means access to the government payroll for